What do you do when the person you love more than anything in the world starts to treat you like you don't even exist? When all the promises of love, loyalty, and a beautiful family come crashing down, leaving you to pick up the broken pieces of your heart? That's exactly what happened to Mary Brown. For years, she stood by Cody Brown, hoping and fighting for a marriage that was slowly suffocating her. She poured everything into their relationship, only to be met with emotional neglect and betrayal until one devastating moment, she found herself caught in the mess of a catfishing scandal that shattered her trust in everyone, even herself. Can you imagine how that feels? To be betrayed by the person you thought you'd spend your life with, only to have the rug pulled out from under you when you least expect it? Mary's journey isn't just about polygamy. It's about one woman's fight to find herself after being manipulated, abandoned, and left in the emotional wreckage of a marriage that wasn't built on love. Stick with me as we break down this heartbreaking yet powerful journey of betrayal, self discovery, and the strength to rebuild. Because Mary Brown's story is one you won't forget. When Mary first met Cody Brown, she wasn't chasing a spotlight, a reality TV deal, or even the complex web of polygamy. She was chasing love, real, deep, soul connecting love. Back in the early days, long before the cameras and the controversy, Mary believed wholeheartedly that Cody was her person. They married in 1990, and to her, it was more than just a wedding, it was the beginning of forever. She envisioned a warm, bustling home filled with laughter, children, unity, and spiritual purpose. She wanted to build a life rooted in faith, commitment, and the shared dream of something bigger than herself. Mary was the first, the original wife, the woman who helped lay the foundation of what would eventually become the Brown family. When Cody decided to bring more wives into their marriage, Mary didn't object. Not because she didn't struggle, but because she believed in the principle of plural marriage. She thought that this lifestyle, challenging as it might be, would bring blessings. She wanted to be obedient to her faith and supportive of Cody's vision. Even as other wives joined, Janelle, then Christine, and years later Robin, Mary tried her best to embrace them. She played the part of the loyal wife, the peacemaker, the spiritual partner holding tight to the values she was raised with. But behind her smiles and polite nods was a woman who was giving more than she was receiving. Her love for Cody was real, and for years, she believed his love was real too. She had no idea that the marriage she had poured her heart into would eventually make her feel like she was invisible in her own home. What started with hope would slowly unravel into heartbreak. As the years went on, Mary began to realize that the love she had once shared with Cody wasn't the love he was giving her anymore. The emotional manipulation and neglect slowly crept in, chipping away at her sense of self-worth, until she felt like a shadow in her own marriage. At the start, Mary was incredibly devoted to Cody. She was his first wife, the one who stood by his side when they built their family, the one he vowed to cherish. But slowly, that bond began to erode. As Cody brought more wives into the family, the love he had promised Mary seemed to fade into the background. He had a way of making her feel small, like she was just one of many women he was obligated to manage, not the partner he had once promised to love and cherish. Take, for example, the way Cody would criticize Mary in front of others. He seemed to have no issue voicing his disappointment in her, making her feel as though she wasn't enough. It was as though no matter what she did, no matter how hard she tried to be the perfect wife, she couldn't measure up to his expectations. His actions, or lack thereof, spoke volumes. He grew distant, and his interactions with her became increasingly cold, especially as he invested more emotionally and physically in his other wives. One of the most telling signs of this emotional neglect came during the seasons where Cody would lavish attention on Robin, his newest wife, while Mary was left to fend for herself. The imbalance in attention and affection couldn't have been more obvious. You could see it in her eyes, in the way she struggled to hold back tears when Cody would gush over Robin's children or express how much he was in love with her. Meanwhile, Mary was left behind, watching her once beloved husband drift further away. This wasn't just about love, though, it was about control. Cody's behavior became more manipulative, more demanding. He expected Mary to accept the reality of polygamy with unquestioning faith, while still demanding all her emotional energy. At the same time, He seemed to disregard her needs. He ignored the pain she was feeling, brushing it off as something she should just get over. And Mary, in her desperation to hold on to her marriage and her family, did just that. She swallowed her pain, suppressed her anger, and told herself that if she just tried harder, things would get better. But they never did. Then came the comments that cut her to the core. Cody started openly comparing her to his other wives. At one point, he told her that he wasn't physically attracted to her anymore. Can you imagine hearing that from the person you've given everything to? To have someone you love with all your heart tell you, in no uncertain terms, that they no longer find you desirable? This wasn't just a blow to her self esteem, it was a direct attack on her identity. She was no longer Cody's Mary. She was just another woman, easily replaced and forgotten. As the years went on, Mary's sense of self worth was further battered. She started to internalize the messages Cody was sending her. She wasn't good enough. She wasn't attractive enough. She wasn't enough, period. And it wasn't just his words, it was the constant emotional abandonment. Cody seemed to have no interest in truly understanding the pain Mary was going through. Instead of being her partner in her emotional struggles, he was increasingly her oppressor, either too busy with his other wives or too indifferent to notice her suffering. Her emotional isolation reached a breaking point when she found herself in a highly publicized catfishing scandal. The man she believed to be an attentive, loving, and supportive figure turned out to be a complete lie, just like Cody's treatment of her. The betrayal was almost too much to bear. She had spent so many years trying to fill the emotional void left by Cody's neglect, and now to be deceived by someone online, someone who promised to be everything Cody wasn't, shattered whatever was left of her trust. This catfishing scandal wasn't just a betrayal from a stranger, it was the final nail in the coffin of her marriage. It highlighted the depth of Mary's loneliness and the emotional void Cody had left her in. The manipulation she had endured for years now had a face, a real life person who made her feel worthy of attention at least for a while. But when it all came crashing down, the trauma was almost unbearable. Mary had been emotionally abandoned by the very people who were supposed to be her partners in life. Cody, first and foremost. Her self-worth had been eroded for years, and now, with the catfishing scandal, it was as though the world had confirmed what Cody had been telling her all along, that she was not enough. The toll this emotional manipulation took on Mary was devastating. It wasn't just the direct insults or the abandonment. It was the steady erosion of her confidence, the feeling of being unimportant, the nagging sense that she was just an afterthought in Cody's life. And what makes it all the more heartbreaking is that she had no choice but to endure it in silence, often without anyone to validate her pain. Cody's emotional neglect wasn't just damaging, it was a form of emotional control, one that kept Mary feeling small, invisible, and for far too long, utterly powerless. The catfishing incident was, without a doubt, the breaking point for Mary, a betrayal so deep that it left a scar on her that would take years to heal. Up until that moment, Mary had been holding on to the remnants of hope that somehow her marriage could be salvaged. But the cruel twist of fate, in the form of an online relationship with a man who wasn't who he said he was, shattered whatever trust she had left, not just in men, but in herself. It started innocently enough. Mary, like many people, was seeking a connection, a bit of validation, a sense of love and affection that had been sorely lacking in her marriage to Cody. She met someone online, someone who seemed to care about her in ways that Cody no longer did. This man made Mary feel special, valued, seen, things she hadn't felt in years. For once, she believed someone was paying attention to her emotional needs. But when the truth came crashing down, it was devastating. The person she had been talking to, the person who had told her everything she wanted to hear, turned out to be a complete fabrication. The man she thought was real was nothing but a stranger hiding behind a screen, using her vulnerabilities against her. The betrayal wasn't just about being lied to, it was about the cruel reminder that she had been seeking attention and affection from someone who had no intention of truly caring. It was the final confirmation of the emotional abandonment she had already been enduring with Cody. This experience deepened Mary's trust issues in ways that are hard to fully grasp. How could she trust anyone after that? How could she ever believe someone would genuinely care for her when she had been duped so easily? The catfishing incident only reinforced the painful truth she had been struggling to accept for years. She wasn't enough for Cody, and now it seemed she wasn't even enough for a stranger. Emotionally, the fallout was immense. Mary felt humiliated, vulnerable, and utterly alone. The incident magnified her sense of unworthiness, and the walls she had built around her heart grew even thicker. It was as though the catfishing scandal confirmed her worst fears that no one, not even someone she could connect with online, was ever going to see her as worthy of true love and respect. It wasn't just about the betrayal from this man, it was a moment that symbolized all the emotional neglect and pain she had been silently suffering. And while the catfishing scandal didn't define Mary's entire journey, it was a catalyst that forced her to face the painful truth that she needed to rebuild her trust, not just in others, but in herself. After years of emotional neglect, manipulation, and betrayal, Mary finally reached a breaking point. The decision to separate from Cody wasn't something she came to lightly. It wasn't just the culmination of one argument or one disappointing event. It was a slow burn, a gradual understanding that her emotional well being had been sacrificed for far too long. The weight of it all had finally become unbearable. By the time Mary made her choice, she had already been through so much. The endless emotional strain from Cody's lack of affection, his increasing distance, and the constant tension within their family had drained her. She had given everything she could to make it work, to make her marriage work, but it was never enough. Not for Cody, not for the family. And as time went on, it became clearer that nothing was going to change. The emotional toll was immense. Mary had spent so many years trying to hold on to the idea of family, of love, and of connection. She had tried to convince herself that if she just gave it more time, if she just tried a little harder, things might get better. But the truth was, the relationship had been broken for so long, and it wasn't just Cody who had changed. She had changed too. Her sense of self worth had been chipped away, piece by piece, until there was barely anything left to hold on to. The final push came when Mary realized that the pain of staying in the relationship far outweighed the fear of leaving. The thought of continuing to live in a marriage where she felt unseen, unloved, and emotionally abandoned was more devastating than the idea of starting over alone. She was exhausted from fighting a battle that was never truly hers to win. More importantly, she began to understand that her happiness and her healing could only happen outside of that toxic dynamic. The emotional weight of the decision wasn't easy to carry. She still loved Cody in some ways, and the thought of leaving him was heartbreaking. But Mary knew deep down that she deserved better. She deserved to be seen, valued, and most importantly, to be loved in a way that wasn't conditional or manipulative. For Mary, separation wasn't just an escape. It was the first step towards reclaiming her own sense of worth and beginning the long process of healing. The decision marked the beginning of her journey towards self discovery, independence, and the possibility of a future where she wasn't defined by the trauma of her past. After the heartache of separation, Mary began the long and often painful journey of rebuilding herself. It wasn't an instant transformation, but with each passing day, she grew stronger, more resilient, and more determined to reclaim her sense of self. For years, she had defined herself through her marriage to Cody, through the expectations of the polygamous lifestyle, and through the roles she played within the family. But now, for the first time in a long while, she had the chance to redefine who she was, free from the constraints of a broken relationship. The early stages of healing were understandably tough. Mary had spent so much of her life trying to please others, to keep the peace, to hold things together. After the divorce, she had to learn how to put herself first, to prioritize her own happiness and emotional health. And while this was a process that came with its challenges, it was also incredibly empowering. For the first time, she had the space to focus on herself, her needs, her desires, and her goals. One of the most profound aspects of Mary's rediscovery was her relationship with herself. She slowly started to reconnect with the woman she had been before the emotional manipulation, before the constant feeling of being unseen. There were moments of doubt, of course. There were days when she wondered if she would ever find happiness again, or if she could ever trust someone else the way she once trusted Cody. But each small step she took toward healing was a victory. A big part of her healing process came from learning how to love herself again. After years of being emotionally starved, Mary realized she needed to fill that void herself. She worked on building her confidence, rediscovering her passions, and setting boundaries in ways she never had before. It was a gradual process, but with each new boundary she set, whether it was refusing to accept disrespect or learning how to say no, she became stronger. As Mary found peace within herself, she also began to cautiously re enter the world of love. She didn't jump into relationships immediately. Instead, she took her time, carefully navigating her feelings and the risks involved in opening up to someone new. There were, of course, moments of hesitation and fear, especially after the betrayal she had experienced. But with each new step, Mary began to rebuild her trust in herself and in the possibility that she could find love again, this time on her own terms. What's most inspiring about Mary's journey is how she didn't let her past define her future. She didn't allow herself to be a victim of the emotional abuse and manipulation she had suffered. Instead, she chose to take control of her life, to rebuild with strength, and to reclaim the hope that had been stripped away from her for so many years. Through it all, she learned that healing isn't linear, but that it's possible. Pain and all, to emerge from trauma stronger, more self aware, and ready to embrace new beginnings. Mary's journey wasn't just about leaving Cody, it was about learning to walk alone, to stand up for herself, and to believe that a future filled with love, respect, and happiness was not only possible, but within her reach. Mary's transformation is nothing short of inspiring. From a woman trapped in a cycle of emotional neglect and manipulation, she has blossomed into someone who now knows her worth, understands her value, and is determined to live life on her own terms. The woman we see today is a testament to resilience, someone who has taken the painful lessons from her past and turned them into stepping stones toward a brighter, more empowered future. What stands out most about Mary's journey is how she refused to let the past define her. For so many years, she was caught in a relationship that stripped away her confidence and left her feeling unworthy of love. But through the tears, the heartache, and the betrayal, Mary has emerged stronger than ever before. She learned the hard way that her happiness was not tied to anyone else, not Cody, not the expectations of the polygamous lifestyle, but to herself. And that realization has been her true liberation. Now, Mary is a woman who is open to love, but this time, it's different. She won't settle for less than she deserves. She's learned the importance of self respect and boundaries, and she understands that real love can only flourish when both partners bring their whole selves to the table. Mary isn't just looking for love. She's looking for love that honors who she is, love that supports her growth, and love that complements the strong, confident woman she's become. Her story offers hope to anyone in a toxic or controlling relationship. If Mary can rise from the ashes of betrayal and manipulation, so can anyone. Her journey proves that, no matter how deep the pain, it is possible to reclaim your life, your self worth, and your ability to love again. So, here's to the new Mary, a woman who knows her power, embraces her truth, and is ready to face whatever the future holds, knowing that the best is yet to come. If you've been inspired by Mary's incredible journey, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you think she made the right choice to leave Cody? What's your take on her healing process? Drop your comments below. I can't wait to hear from you. And if you want to stay up to date on all the latest news and stories from the Sister Wives world, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.